We're joined now by Professor Magnus Kpakol, who is the former Chief Economic Advisor to President Obasanjo and former National Coordinator of the National Poverty Eradication Program. So good to have you on Newsnight tonight.
Thank you, Ngazi. Very happy to be here. Thank you, Sulaiman.
Yes,
good to see you guys again.
We will come to some of the revelations being made by the central bank governor there as to how, fraudulent claims of up to $4 billion have been discovered. But what does the increase in interest rates from 22.75% to 24.75%? What does it mean? What does it mean for business? What does it mean for the economy as a whole?
Well, thank you. Well, basically, let me first of all just say that I commend the governor of the central bank. There's one thing that I like about him, and that is his calm and his poise, because I think that investors are looking at that. Sometimes it's not really just the numbers, that matter, but just sort of the poise that you bring to the table. And I think that he continues to show that for the country in a very difficult situation. Everybody knows around the world that we have serious difficulty in Nigeria with our economic situation and the financial condition. So, but he tries to give confidence, and I think that's extremely important. Now, to the question as to what it means, what it means is pretty straightforward. The one thing is, I always wonder why we say 200 basis points. We make it sound worse. Just say 2%. Because that's basically what it is. I mean, so, because
Keep it simple.
Yeah, you terrify people. Just, 400 basis points, 200 basis points. People think something bad has really happened. But that's the lingo. So you see, from even just using that kind of language suggests that there is an audience that the central bank is speaking to. I can assure you that many people in my village in Bidere are not concerned about what he said today. They were probably watching Africa Magic when he was talking. So that tells you. See, the thing is to keep it simple, right, to keep it where people can relate to it and all. He's talking to a certain audience. He wasn't talking to the people in the villages. But the audience is important. The whole world is looking at us. Investors are looking at us. We want to be competitive with the other countries of the world. And he's trying to tell them, hey, we are behaving the way we're supposed to behave. This is how the central bank is supposed to behave. Now, ordinarily, on the surface, you would think that we should not be raising rates, or certainly not be raising rates too much, because we are not producing.
Right.
Okay? So last year, agriculture, the whole of last year grew just a little over 1%. A sector that represents about 25% of the economy, growing just barely 1%. And that's really how we've been growing for the last several years. I'll be hard pressed to think of a time in recent memory when we got near 5% growth rate in agriculture. And that is a calamitous situation that we can't do that. We got 25%. Now, you go find other sectors. The only sectors that you can speak to as doing well would be telecom, and because they're growing at a very good rate. And luckily, that represents now maybe near 17% of the economy, and that's good. Obviously, finance also is doing pretty good. But manufacturing is not. Okay, so the places where you want to see us be competitive so that we can sell goods to people in other countries. Because the whole thing, it boils down to, do you have the capacity, the competence to produce? And right now, we are not showing that we have the capacity to produce the goods and the services that the people of the world want. So then, why do you raise interest rates? Right. When you would expect that people want to go borrow money so that they can produce more. The manufacturing posted negative growth rates last year as a whole. Mining also did. As I said, agriculture barely 1%. So on the surface, you would say you should not raise rates. The question is, why do you? Well, his mandate, Mr. Yemi Cardoso's mandate, is to check inflation. And so he's looking at inflation and says, what do I do? He's got only one tool in his hand, especially right now. And his monetary policy, his number one monetary policy tool that he has in his hand is what to do is rates. got to do with rates. So he's got to use it. Because if he doesn't use it, people will say, hey, you saw a snake, you didn't kill it.
And, listening to you, some of the things that come to mind is, this is Professor Kpakol, because he's worked with people in the grassroots. Perhaps that is why you're talking about us breaking it down. Yeah. And even with the brilliant of broadcasters, sometimes if you're not too careful, you will think that the 200 basis points it means actually 200% problem for you. So now let's start talking about some of the key things that may ultimately be done, because if you say that that's what he should do, and you also, by the way, you also spoke about his body language, which you said is very important.
Inspires confidence.
Confidence, especially from the outside world. What more do you think we can do that will ultimately translate into gains for the everyday people? And that is why you're here, because whatever he's done now would translate into some kind of pain in the long run for some people. And if they don't have someone that can actually break it down for them, they will think that the CBN is a bad financial, bank, and the man running it is also insensitive.
Yeah. I mean, on the surface it may look that way, but I think that, to me, I think he's doing what he's supposed to do. If he doesn't do that, then people start to question him. And what they did, now some people could also argue that they probably should have waited until the next meeting to go up 2%.
Which is in May, right?
To see how the other 400 basis, I said it too, the other 4%, to see how the other 4%, course through the economy. But I think probably they wanted to do it in that large chunk, but thought differently. Okay, let's do it a little bit, and then we'll come back and do some more. Let's not overkill. So maybe this was already planned. And that's probably the reason why right away, within weeks, they had another Monetary Policy Committee meeting. So probably that's what it is. These are very smart guys that are sitting around that table. So I believe that they know what they're doing. And then the other thing also is that most consumers don't play using interest rates in Nigeria. We don't buy things on credit. Right. So people just go to the market. At Wuse Market, you're not going to see a lot of people that are selling things on credit. They just come and they pay with cash. So, but in societies where people do a lot of credit, like say the United States, it will ripple through the economy much faster because you go and buy a tie on credit and all of that. But people don't do that. So it really typically affects. And then in some sense, it's probably good for consumers that leave their money in the bank.
Can it work here in Nigeria?
Because their rates go up.
Can such work here in Nigeria?
Yeah, it will work. I mean,
the credit system.
Credit economy.
It will work. I mean, people always think that Nigeria is different. Nigeria is not different. I think the problem we have is we don't educate our people well enough. Now, you got to talk to the people. The human capital development is extremely, extremely important. It's an area we don't pay much attention to. I was privileged many years ago. I went with the president when I was economic advisor to the president, and I had fortunate to meet with Lee Kuan Yew and of Singapore. And he was emphatic on how they train their people when they first came in. Because you have to show people the direction where you want to go. And you got to make sure that this is drilled down to the grassroots. And there are ways that we can do this. I heard that in Benue, the governor has made it such that local governments now have sort of autonomy.
Autonomy, yeah.
And that's extremely important. That's what we want. You want freedom, political and economic freedom. The people are smart if you allow them to be free. Oftentimes, we are severed from our resources. Some of the problems we have in the country today is because people are severed from their endowed resources. Right. And the government comes and to dictate for them. And then you expect them to cooperate.
When they should own the process
and have a say. Now, because it is difficult to make that switch from them, you have to have good conversation with them. So you got to be engaging, but you have to have structures by which you do that. I have said very often that every local government should have an economic development office, and they should have an economic development corporation. It is something that acts parallel, although probably governed by the local government chairman, but parallel to the government, so that they can engage in business and trade and find products where they can have a productive capacity and sell to the world. But we're not doing it. Let the people, the Nigerians are extremely ingenious.
Right.
And
So
if you allow them to do that, then
what you're saying is further tightening is the way to go. There are no other options on the table as far as, you know, raising interest rates are concerned. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
clearly?
what I'm
Because
saying,
I want to just quickly
you got to make sure so that you can say that I said so.
There's this other issue, you know, I'd like you to trash it very quickly before we wrap.
Yeah.
The MPC actually put fraudulent claims at $2.4 billion.
Okay.
Is it telling of what's been going on in our economy long before now?
Okay, well, that's the easier question first, before the EFCC question. Okay, so the easier question is, would I have done? I probably wouldn't have gone that far.
Right.
I probably would have just done something so people see that I've done something. But that he did it is not anything bad, is what I'm saying. It's not what's going to kill the economy. Right. I think he's done what he had to do. But I probably would have gone maybe I could have been more modest in the increase. But I would have done something so that they would see that people who are watching see that I also did something. Now, it is a shame that we hear of this $2.4 billion that may have been going the wrong way. And I think that it was very good that he talked about it because he then shows that he's bringing transparency to what happens at the central bank. I'm not at the EFCC or anywhere to be able to comment a little bit more expertly on that. But I think that coming from him, I believe that it happened. And that shows that henceforth, we're not going to be doing that anymore. Mm-hmm. And so investors and people and citizens, hey, we have a more transparent central bank now. And things are going to be, I think that's the story that I get from that.
And lastly, before I let you go, the local government is something that you just touched on, and I recall then I think Ikosi Ketu, one of the local government, was even doing housing and a few other things. So what more can they do in the face of the Benue example? Let's say they all have the autonomy that they should.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that they should look for how to produce. We've got to pay very good, strong attention to human capital development, which is not just building classroom blocks or sending people to school or getting health checks. It involves behavioral changes. You know, somebody once asked me, said, what would we do, just like you're asking, to come out of our economic quagmire? Yeah. Well, should we change the people? You got to work on the people. It's the people that make things happen. So from the president on down, to whoever the littlest guy is in the village, you know, we all have to realize that it is incumbent on us, you know, to show to the world that we can produce and we can be transparent and we can do what is right. So basically what it is get the people to do what they're supposed to do, and then we get Nigeria to the level where we're supposed to be.
I think it's a fine place to leave it. And the soundbite there is that we have smart people from across strata, grassroots up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So always a delight speaking with you, Professor.
Thank you so
Magnus
very much.
We'd like to see you again so that we can do more.
Appreciate
until
it.
Nigeria and Africa becomes great.